In this video, I'm going to go through the solution to the art problem. The problem states that Anna is experimenting with a new style of art. She's going to drop paint on a canvas, and then she's going to find the coordinates of the droplets on the canvas. There is going to be n droplets on the canvas, and the app is going to get the number of the points on the canvas, and on each separate lines she's going to enter the coordinate, the x and y coordinates of each droplet. For instance, in this example there are 5 droplets, and the coordinate of the first droplet is 44, 62. 44 is x coordinate and 62 is the y coordinate. And this is going to continue for 5 separate lines. Our app has to find the coordinate of a rectangle which is going to cover all these points. For instance, the diagram which is going to cover all these points is shown here. These are the points. Now the rectangle is drawn here. The way we find the coordinates of bottom left corner and the top right corner is very simple. What we do is that we are going to go through all these points, find the minimum x value. The minimum x value between 44, 34, 24, 42, and 64 is 24. To have the rectangle to cover these without any point to be on the rectangle is the minimum minus 1. So the bottom left corner is going to have the x coordinate of 23. Then we are going to find the minimum value of all the y values, 62, 69, 78, 44, and 10. The minimum value is 10, and the y coordinate of the bottom left corner of the rectangle is the minimum minus 1, which is going to be 9. We do exactly the same thing. Between all the x coordinates, we're going to find the maximum. In this case is 64, and then the x coordinate, the upper right corner, is going to be the maximum, which is 64 plus 1, which is 65. And the same for y coordinate. The maximum here is 78, and then the coordinate of upper right corner is going to be 78 plus 1, which is 79. The reason we add and subtract 1 is that the rectangle cannot go through any of these points. So now let's go and start developing our app. So this is the design of the screen. Go ahead, change the title to Art App, drag and drop a horizontal layout, then drag and drop a label, type the text, enter input, then drag and drop a text box, change the name of the text box to input_txt, and make sure that you set the multi-line to be true, because remember, we have to enter the number of points, then on every separate line we have to enter x and y coordinate. In this problem, because I have to display the x, y coordinate of the lower and the upper corner of the rectangle, I can either use a notifier or a text box. But the problem with the notifier is that I cannot use next line character on a notifier. So the input is going to be all on the same line. So I decided to use a text box, which I called it output underscore txt, because I can use the next line character for this one. So the output is going to be on two separate lines. You can use either notifier or the text box, it's up to you. Anyway, drag and drop another horizontal layout, drag and drop a label, change the text to coordinates of the rectangle, and then drag and drop another text box, change the name to output underscore text, then drag and drop the button, change the text to submit, and change the name to submit underscore btn. Again, as I said, you can also drag and drop a notifier here, but I'm not going to use a notifier. I'm going to use the output text here. Now let's go ahead and start writing the code. The first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to introduce a few variables. The first one, I'm going to introduce, let's call it max underscore x. And then we set the initial value. Because max x is going to keep track of the maximum x, I'm going to set the initial value to the lowest value possible. Let's say negative 999. Okay. I do the same thing. I'm going to define another variable called mean underscore x. I'm going to do the opposite thing that I did with max x. I'm going to set min x to be the maximum possible value, which is 9999. Then I'm going to duplicate this one. I'm going to change this one to max y and duplicate this and change it to mean y. Now I'm going to introduce another variable. I call it input, which is going to be used to get the input of the text box. And the value doesn't matter what you initialize because we are going to use it inside the loop. And then another variable I'm going to use is called temp, which is a temporary variable. These are all the variables I need to introduce in my app. Now, the app is going to start when the user click on the submit button. So I'm going to go and drag and drop on click. Now, the first thing I'm going to do is that, because again, as usual, user can run the app more than once, I'm going to set all these variables inside the click. So I'm going to set max x to be the minimum value possible. I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to set max x and min x to be the biggest possible value. Now to do the same thing, I have max and min. I'm going to duplicate this one and set this one to max y, and min x I duplicated and I set this one to min y. So these are the initialization for x and y coordinate for max and min. Again, initially, maximum x is the lowest number, minimum x is the largest number, max y to the lowest number, and min y to the largest number. Now I'm going to set global input. So I'm going to set global input to be the content of the text, but I'm going to split it with the next line character. So I need to go and find the split function here. So I'm going to say split the input text with the character of next line. If you remember, the next line character is \n. Now, when I do this split, it's going to give me every line of the input. So I'm going to go through a loop, but I'm not going to start with the first line because the first line is the number of entries. So I'm going to start from the second line. So I'm going to go through a loop. Now I'm going to change the name to index. I told you I'm not going to start from the first line because the first line tells me how many data I'm going to have or how many droplets. I'm going to start with the second line. And now, how many times am I going to go through the loop is going to be the length or the number of elements in my input list. Remember, when I split the string here, it's going to produce a list for me. So I'm going to go to the list here and I'm going to get the length of the list. And the length of this list is going to be the length of input. And I'm going to go through this list one by one. The first thing I'm going to do is that I'm going to set temp, the temporary variable I introduced here, to be the split of the input with the character comma now. So now I'm going to go and I'm going to split every line of the list input starting from line 2 at character comma. Okay, so I'm going to duplicate this one. I'm going to change this one to temp. Now I want to split with character comma, but this one, it has to be the element index of the input list. So I need to use the block select. So I'm going to down here and I'm going to use select, but select from what list? I want the list to be input and then the index is going to be this index. So I'm going to get every line of x and y coordinate which is inside the input and I'm going to split it about comma. So now temp is going to be a list of two elements, x and y. So now I can go ahead and check the minimum and maximum value. So I'm going to say control if. So now I have to do the comparison. So I'm going to get one of these. So the first one I'm going to check I want to see if to find the minimum value. So I use less. And now I have to check the x-coordinate of temp. To find the x-coordinate of temp, I'm going to use the select, but this one is going to be temp now. Now the index for x now is just 1. Always the first coordinate is x. So I'm going to check this one against my minimum x. So I'm going to get this, and I'm going to say min x. So if the x coordinate of temp is less than minimum x, then I'm going to set minimum x to be this, the first element. So I'm going to say minimum x, let's say take one of these, and I'm going to say minimum x is equal to this selection. So duplicate this one and put it here. So this one is going to set the minimum x. I'm going to do exactly for other ones. So this one is for minimum x. Let's say for maximum x. So this becomes greater than max x. If the current x is greater than max x, then I'm going to set max x is going to be equal to this one. Here there is a mistake here. This has to be min x. So this is going to find the minimum x. This is going to find the maximum x. I do exactly the same for y. So I'm going to duplicate this one. So for y, because y is the second element, so I'm going to say 2 here is less than, let's say, min y, the first one. If this one is less than min y, then I'm going to say min y is the second element here. Now I'm going to duplicate again because I want the maximum, so I'm going to say greater, so the second one greater than max y, then max y is the second element. Now that we have our min x, min y, max x, and max y, we can go ahead and start preparing the output. So I'm going to go and use my temp variable, and then the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to set the value of temp variable to be the bottom left corner of the rectangle. So what I have to do is that I have to use the join one. Now I need 5 sockets here. You will see why. So this is the third one, fourth one, and fifth one. Now the first socket, I'm going to use open bracket. Then I'm going to have the minimum value of x minus 1. So I need minus 1 here, and here is my minimum x. So I'm going to duplicate here, and I'm going to say min x, and I'm going to subtract 1 from it. Now I'm going to have a comma here. Now I'm going to duplicate here, change this one to mean y. Subtract it, and then I need the close bracket, and then the next line character, which is \n. This is going to output the first coordinate. Now I have to do exactly the same thing with the second one. The only thing with the second point is that I have to append it to this temp. So I have to add one more socket to the top, and I'm going to use temp here. So I'm going to say get temp. So again, open bracket, then it's going to be maxx, but maxx this time has to be plus. So this one is subtraction, I can't use it. So I need an addition, maxx plus 1. This is how. Now, this one, again, I'm going to get rid of and then duplicate this one, and then make this one max y. Now, after I set temp to this value, I have to set output to temp. So I'm going to say set output the text to be equal to temp. And this is all about this app. So now we are going to go and use the emulator to see if the app works. So to test the app, we are going to start typing the input. So 5, enter, 44, 62, 34, 69, 24, 78, 42, 44, 64, 10. Now if I click on submit, you can see the output is 23.9, which is 23.9, and 65.79, which is 65.79.